the only reason Annette really likes me is because of my nephew. That's okay. We all have our redeeming qualities, and I guess he's mine. Wow, I'm just so delighted to be here. What a great lineup of speakers we've had today. I feel a little bit humbled to be included in such an august group. And I'm also really nervous to speak to so many colleagues and friends. For some reason, it's easier for me to speak to 1,000 strangers than to 100 friends. But it's good to see so many people, and it's great to be here. I'm not so brilliant. Thanks for setting me up like that. And I don't know if I am a transformational leader. I know that I am working in a transformational time. And I know that my organization is changing daily. It's changing for the long term. It's changing for over the last decade. It changes every single day. And a lot of times, I just try to keep up. If that makes me a transformational leader, then I'm delighted to be here to talk about that. But I do want to talk about, one, I want to start with the landscape, what we're dealing with right now. And I'm going to go from Dominic's great, big, global landscape, and I'm going to bring it right down to my little sphere. I want to talk about organizations like ours that are charged with that small responsibility of making change. We are all trying to make the communities in which we live and serve better. And that's no small task. And so I just want to take a few minutes on that. And then I want to get into what it takes to create and lead an organization that is in transformation. So let me start with the landscape. I'm at United Way Toronto, and I've been there for almost 16 years. And so I think about United Way as having started when I got there. So with apologies to Robin, to Ted, to Sherry, to Quinn, to everybody else. So when I arrived and the world began, I just want to talk a little bit about the fundraising landscape. So I remember my boss then was a woman named Ann Golden, and she said, okay, look, we're at 55 million. We want to be at 100 million. I don't know how fast you can get us there, but the business that we're going to be in is all about individual giving. We've got to get major donors. We've got to get them inside this organization. We've got to do it right now. And my first thought was I should have done more research before I took this job. But at that time, U of T was in the middle of $1 billion campaign. And I think Sick Kids was in a $100 million campaign. And the arts organizations were all going out. I remember COC was getting ready to go. They hadn't yet met Izzy Sharp and Four Seasons, and there was no building on the corner of University and Adelaide or Richmond. I think AGO was just going out, and they didn't yet have the Thompsons or the Westons, and ROM was going out, and they didn't yet have Michael E. Chin. Everybody was going out, and they were going out big, and Anne was saying, how long till we get to 100 million? And you know, I have this persistent optimism. I didn't really think that that was too big of a problem. I didn't look at it as the landscape's too crowded, there's way too much competition. I actually thought, if U of T can land $150 million donors, then they're normalizing $1 million gifts for all the rest of us. And that's just good. I only saw it as a way for us to take our sights up higher. And sure enough, in 1999, we got our first $1 million gift. That was our first challenge grant. And then we've been able to do it ever since. And I look now, today, at the landscape. So U of T's out on a $2 billion campaign. Sick Kids built this, and Ted's already talking about the next campaign. PMH was going to go out on a $500 million campaign, and they just ratcheted up to $1 billion. And so when people say to me, gee, it's a crowded landscape, there's so much competition, how are any of us going to find our space? How will we possibly grow? I remain relentlessly optimistic. This is a city of wealth. There are a lot of people who have a lot of money. Moreover, they want to help change the community in which they live, which only represents opportunity. So I think about that a lot. I think about how do I separate people from their money. That is what I think about. There's no getting around it. But I also think about how do I motivate them in a way that will really work for them and for my organization. How do I make this work for all of us. And I firmly believe that it's possible. So when I think about competition, I think more about the caliber of the other organizations that are out there. Not that I have to take a bigger piece of the pie. I think we grow the pie, but I watch them. Not because they're going to take my donors. We actually share donors. Probably if you looked at my donor list, you'd have half of them in your organizations, or at least some of them. But I do look at what is happening out there that's really creative. Who's doing something that's technologically advanced? Who's ahead of me on social media? Where's the real talent, and how do I attract them? Who's got networks? All of these things, I believe, make a huge difference to my own ability, to my organization's ability to thrive. So competition, yes, but in the best possible way. The second thing I think about in terms of the landscape is demographics. So I really watched with interest Moses Znaimer, and I'm with him. The Zoomers have the money, they got the time, they got the talent, they actually got it all, if you want to know the truth. He's right. But frankly, most of us have them. If you've got big donors, then you've got the Zoomers. I am thinking about the millennials, and here's why. I'm thinking about the millennials because I'm always thinking about my pipeline. Who's coming up next? And here's something that really, really upsets me. I am told that some people think of my organization as being their grandmother's charity. I can't fathom that. Some people call my organization a Bay Street corporate bureaucratic big place. I can't fathom that people would think of us that way. But apparently, some people think of my organization that way. And I had the opportunity this past fall to go to We Day. If you've ever gone to We Day, then you know what I experienced last fall. So just a quick anecdote, and I am going to keep this short, I promise, Daryl, but walked in, and this young woman was to take me to my party at the ACC in We Day. Everybody know what We Day is? That's the Kielburgers, we to the, me to we. Wow, it was loud. As we're going, she said, "Stop! Could you wait just 1 second? I have to see them." And I said, "Who are they?" And she said, "They are the Jonas Brothers." And I thought to myself, who are they? I didn't say it out loud. Anyway, she was completely worked up and her eyes were filling up and she had her phone out. And I thought, I should help this poor girl. She's trying to take her own picture. And then, of course, I did try, and she was like, oh, my God. Doing a selfie. Sherry explained to me later what that was. And that's when I realized, they're right. We are my grandmother's charity. So that's why I want millennials, because they don't actually think the way I do. They actually think differently. They come at things with a different perspective. They have a whole different mindset. We've recently appointed a director of millennials in my organization. Not because that's where my next $100 million is coming from, but because that's my pipeline. That's people who don't think like I do. That's people who will change, disrupt, create chaos, and actually make us better. The third thing I think about on landscape is the donor psyche, because I really feel that more than anything on the landscape right now, the donor psyche is what is making this transformation. And that is about what we heard already. It's about customization. It's about making things meaningful on a very deeply personal level. It is about an enhanced level of scrutiny for which none of us could ever have been prepared. And that's not just the scrutiny that Hillary referred to in the media, which is about all of those things. It's also scrutiny about how well we do what we do. And many of those questions are perfectly legitimate. They want to know what impact we're actually having. They want us to measure. They want us to evaluate. They want us to be able to provide proof points of progress. Totally legitimate. But boy, is it ever hard work. It's hard work for everybody. It's hard work if you're building a building. But let me tell you, if you're in the business of social services, if your business is about changing lives, it's really hard. What I'm noticing about our donors is that they do want to be change makers. They do want to see the transformation that we're all living. They want to see lasting, sustainable change. We have to move from meeting urgent human need to addressing root cause. And look, everybody in this room is doing that, and I know that. I think about WWF. They are trying to preserve the habitat, but they are fighting climate change because that is what is causing the disrepair to our habitat. I think about the Red Cross. They are out there, first responders on disaster, but they are also creating resilient communities. And I think about my own organization. We are working hard to meet urgent human need every single day. That's what United Ways have done forever. But now we have to get underneath the root cause of issues that create the vulnerability in our communities. And that is decade-long work. That is the work that will take us a very, very long time. And the challenge is, as we look at the broad scope of the issues that we deal with at United Way, whether it's poverty reduction, whether it's getting youth through high school and graduation, or if it's youth violence, trying to help stem youth violence, we make progress, and we try to track the progress we make, and we try to create a good narrative about the progress that we've made, and we get our donors feeling inspired about what we have been able to accomplish. And then there is the disruption at Danzig Court. And for anybody that lives in Toronto, you know what that is. And if you don't, we had an incident 2 summers ago in Scarborough where 22 people were shot at a backyard barbecue. And all of the work that you've done for the 5 years before is captured in the media and in people's minds around one incident. I thought we were fixing youth crime. I thought we had come so far. Apparently, we're right back where we started from. And no, we're not. Of course we're not. We've actually made great progress. But people read about terrible gun violence and they forget how many more youth are graduating from high school, how many youth are engaged in leadership programs like Annette talked about, how many youth are advancing and improving their lives. I hear Michael Prosterman speak, and I'm just blown away by what we are able to accomplish. But you read about Danzig and we forget. This is the challenge that we have. And it's big, it's real, and our donors want us to be accountable. They want us to be able to explain to them why we have these ongoing challenges. I look at, then, what does it mean for us as we try to engage philanthropists in the work that we do? What challenge does that create for us? If, in fact, our donors want to be change makers with us, if, in fact, they want to create the solutions with us, if, in fact, they want to be part of how we fix the communities in which we live. And I think there's all kinds of opportunities. So I want to take a minute on how philanthropy, what role philanthropy plays in being change makers in the work that we do. There's a big range. I think it was Dominic that said we should enlist the private sector to help us increase impact. And I actually think there's something there. Again, I always like to have in the room people who don't think the way I do, who actually challenge some of my assumptions. And so as I think about our board and the conversations that we have now about impact, about how we're going to evaluate and measure, how we're going to actually set goals, and I'll tell you something, I think we think big, but my board wants us to change the whole world. They have much bigger aspirations than I do, and that's good for us. It's good for them to challenge us on the metrics that we've set. It's good for them to challenge our thinking. But there's a range. There's a range in what that donor engagement looks like. At the one end, we have our board members, we have thought leadership, we have people who actually help us get underneath the issues and set our goals and aspirations, help us set the metrics and measures that we will measure ourselves against, help us set the tracking and the assessment that we will do along the way. But there's also, at the other end of the spectrum, those people that want to engage with us in a very tactical way. They want to give, but they also want to get involved. So I think about my colleagues out in Calgary. They've started a program out there, a fantastic program. They're going to graduate 3,000 more kids from high school. That's their goal. It's a big, fat goal. We're going to graduate 3,000 more students than ever did before. And here's the thing, they've got all these corporate sponsors, but part of the sponsorship package is that they want their own employees to be the mentors of these kids who are going to graduate high school. They want their employees to be the tutors, the mentors, the friends of these youth who will actually graduate from high school. So when I first heard that, I got all nervous for them. I thought, so then what happens when you don't graduate 3,000 more kids? And they said, so what? So what if we only graduate 2,000? That's awesome. And that's right. That is right. So what? I was watching 60 Minutes Sunday night. I don't know how many people saw it, 100,000 homes. I thought, that is one bold goal. We're going to get 100,000 homeless people off the streets of America. Goodness, they're at 68,000 and counting. The first thing my husband said to me is, why don't you sign up and get that happening in Toronto? I said, because we're about youth and neighborhoods. Leave me alone already. But it's a good point. I was fascinated by Rahaf. Where's Rahaf? Is she still here? Talking about data. And I think about the way different companies want to engage with us now. Data is it. We did a big data dive, Julia, remember with AMIA? They brought in a whole team of specialists to take our wicked problem and help us use our data to help us with our solutions. What a different way to engage. I think about pro bono services. I love Michael Prosserman's story about all of the people that serve his organization without giving them a nickel. They're giving them such big stuff, their thought leadership, their time, their talent. They are providing them with the kind of leadership and support they need to make that organization what it can and has become. There's so many different ways for us to enable and leverage philanthropy in our organizations. A while ago, Nicholas Offord wrote an article about the retiring baby boomers and what they're taking with them out of the organization. And all of our needs, our resource needs within the not-for-profit sector, how do we align this great resource and all these people who want to engage with us with this gap that we have, which is resources? Look, I get it. It's hard to align what they want to do with what we need. That is a very, very challenging problem. But goodness, I don't want to just let that go. I don't want to just say, well, it's too hard to figure out, so let's wish them well and see if we can raise more money to hire more staff. How do we leverage what is there and available to us? And I really believe the transformation of our sector is going to be about our rethinking the way we resource, the way we work, the way we engage philanthropy around what we are trying to achieve. We set big goals. Our donors want to know what those goals are. They want to be inspired by our goals. They also want to know what is our theory of change. How are we going to get from here to there? They want to know that we've got a strategy, that we have a plan. I think it was Michael McCain that talked about that meticulous attention to delivering on the plan. They want to see our evaluation and our metrics. They want a clear definition of our progress as we move along. And they want stewardship. They want really good stewardship. And it is labor intensive to provide the stewardship that they want, but it is worth it. Stewardship is exactly what we owe everybody that invests in our organization. And I think at the end of the day, they want evidence of sustainable, lasting change. Excuse me, I'm just going to go get the phone. No, I'm just kidding. So what do we have to do as leaders in our organizations to actually create an environment where this can happen? So I don't have a top 10 list. I really have just a couple of things that I'm thinking about a lot right now. We've just completed a strategic planning process, and we're not landing a 5-year plan with a 10-year vision, because it's just, I don't believe, that relevant anymore. We have a really clear vision of what we're going to accomplish in the community, and we are going to create strategies to make that happen. But it'll be rolling, it'll be iterative, it'll change as we go, because we're changing as we go. So there's 5 things I think about. We have to be anticipatory. We have to be thinking ahead. What could happen? Not the big black swan out of the, yeah, perhaps, but I'm thinking about what's happening next week, what's happening next year. How do we anticipate what is going to come our way? And it must be evidence-based. Some of it, yeah, it comes right out of nowhere. We can't anticipate that. I always remember hearing Mayor Giuliani said that when 9/11 happened, they could never have anticipated that. But everything else they did to prepare for a disaster enabled them to respond to something that they couldn't have anticipated. We need to anticipate, and it should be evidence-based. And we need to be innovative. We've heard that over and over and over today. We actually, when we set out our priorities, we set out 3. neighborhoods, youth, and a strong social services sector. And then we had this fourth one out here that was called innovation. We were going to create a big innovation fund and fund those organizations that had really innovative ideas. And then we said, no, we're not actually going to have a pillar called innovation. We're going to embed it in everything we do. It's not separate. It doesn't hang out there. It's actually a part of the way we work from now on. And it's not restricted to our community priorities. It happens inside the organization, across the organization. We have to start rapid prototyping, piloting, testing, and being comfortable with failure. I know everybody in my organization gets a bit uncomfortable when I say this, but I am now embracing failure.